This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, it's 10:30 at night, just taking a little evening stroll around the neighborhood in short sleeves and shorts. Gorgeous weather at the moment. Not sure what you're getting in London. I'm assuming it's the same, but yeah, incredible weather we've had this weekend. End of the weekend now, Sunday night, heading back into the work week tomorrow. I think you've got some holiday time. Just winding down, decompressing. I managed to hit Kill, new Indian action movie, this evening. You mentioned that you had watched it, so I thought it just kind of everything lined up. Was looking after the baby, Mrs. and daughter upstairs, doing bedtime rituals for what was probably going to be about 40 minutes. So I thought I'll take a big chunk out of this movie and then finished it off later in the evening. Kind of had my eye on it for a while. Not sure where I first happened upon it. I remember seeing the trailer a while back, but I think I also might have seen some clips being discussed online, in terms of the fight choreography in it. I don't know when it was released in India. If it's a movie that has only now come out in India, or if it came out 2 years ago or something. With international movies, you never really know what the kind of pathway to international distribution is. But yeah, I guess it's new to us now. I think in the wake of John Wick, which in my head was sort of the first one of these newer, more modern action movies that are directed by either stuntmen or fight choreographers or whatever. There's been a lot of these other movies that have popped up that are kind of obvious consequences of John Wick. In other words, not the shaky cam CGI fest or no idea what's going on, terrible action that we got pre-John Wick, and are more focused and more trying to do something a bit more visceral and tight. But they've definitely varied in quality. I think recent one directed by one of the directors of John Wick was The Fall Guy, and that didn't really work for me at all. And yeah, some of them have been good, some of them have been bad, but whenever a new one comes along, I'm like, okay, I get you've probably got a few cool bits of cinematography and editing to stick in the trailer, but have you really got the goods to go a whole 2 hours or whatever? And for the first 40 minutes of this movie, I was like, I can have some fun with this, but it's very generic. It's very cheesy. The action isn't great. Not bad, but isn't great. Because that's what you kind of go to these movies for, is great action. That's the bar that John Wick has set. And yeah, I just thought it was all a bit tame. I think maybe I'd also seen that it was the most brutal action movie ever in marketing. So first 40 minutes I was just pretty underwhelmed. Having fun with it, happy to be watching it, but also I won't even remember this movie exists in about 2 weeks' time. And then there's a scene, as you know, 40 minutes in, where his girlfriend is in peril. One of the bad guys has her and is threatening to kill her. And we've seen that scene in 100 action movies. And we know there's absolutely no chance that they'll actually go through it and kill the girlfriend. It's just, okay, fine, we got to go through the motions. We got to show this like little moment of peril. Okay, cool, whatever. It's a completely overused beat, but if you want to do it, fine. You're not doing anything else particularly special in this movie, so go for it. And I'm thinking especially there's no way they do it in an Indian movie. Indian movies, in my experience, seem to be like even more conservative than Hollywood movies when it comes to like being risque or whatever. And then that moment's dragging on and becoming more and more operatic and more the music and the tension. I'm like, Jesus Christ, now you're starting to piss me off because I know you're not going to do it. So just fucking get over it already. Like, let's just move on to something better, because I wasn't born yesterday. And then they fucking kill her. Not only do they kill her, but the movie starts like literally in a sense, because the title card comes up. And I remember seeing that in RRR, which was probably the biggest Indian movie, like in terms of capturing a worldwide audience of the last 10 years, maybe more, 20 years, I don't know, like big deal. Now RRR, like most Indian movies that I've seen, is incredibly long. It's like 5 hours or 4 hours or something. Maybe it's not, maybe it's 3 hours, but it's many hours. And so RRR not showing the title of the movie until like 45 minutes or an hour in or something is like, it's amazing and crazy and just insane and wonderful, but it's also like, in terms of relative to the overall runtime of the movie, it's like a 90-minute movie showing the title 10 minutes in or something. This is like a less than 2 hour movie, which must make it the shortest Indian film I've ever seen. And the title, which is an absolutely terrible title, both the name of the movie, Kill, which is completely ridiculous, and I wish they'd come up with something better, and the actual like graphic design or whatever of that title, the font and all that shit, just missed opportunity there on both fronts. But the decision to go, no, everything that you've been watching for 45 minutes, that's not the movie that you're here to see. This chick dying kickstarts the movie. And I like literally got to my feet holding my newborn, and I was just he was like, let's fucking go moment. It was one of the most hyped I can remember being in like watching a movie. That moment, like, that is a golden cinema moment, definitely a golden action moment. It's an action moment that I'll always remember. Basically, like on a meta level, I don't know how deliberate this is, but like, I don't know how conscious they are of how soft and tame and predictable and generic the first 45 minutes of the movie is. I'd actually like to hear from the writer and director, who I believe is the same person. Like, were you deliberately trying to make people be like, all right, okay, that's all this movie's got. I know everything that I'm going to see here. And then switch it up. What we get then afterwards, let's not just say what we get afterwards. Let's say immediately afterwards, so that the 15 minutes or so that follows that is incredible, like so exhilarating. Like that is the peak of this movie for me. That just where he goes from like Mr. Nice Guy, honorable, soft, like protector, you know, nurturing guy, to like scorched earth. Because obviously we've seen Scorched Earth in John Wick is a Scorched Earth movie, and this is basically like a rape revenge movie in terms of like show the absolute worst thing that could happen to someone, and therefore they have carte blanche to be a complete fucking psychopath for the whole rest of the movie, and yet you're somehow still on their side. And I'll get into that because that's a whole fucking can of worms. But that 15-20 minutes where he's like, literally the only fucking thing that's motivating my physical form to move and exist on this planet is to kill every single person involved in this. Now, after 15-20 minutes, they give him a protection mission again, where he, remembers that his girlfriend had said, look after my sister, she's my life. And then, it's like, okay, maybe it was unsustainable to just make him be pure scorched earth for the whole rest of the movie. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. It's not like the rest of the movie is like completely neutered. It's still incredibly brutal, but it's less interesting because really the monster that we see for that 15 minutes, like, I don't even know if, like, how I would feel watching an hour of that character just going to work. And maybe there's like, they couldn't bring themselves to do that, and they had to go, look, no, he's still a good guy. He's still doing it because he's a good guy, and this is a good guy thing to do. But anyway, that switcheroo was brilliant. I'm actually just so grateful that I had the whole emotional journey of sort of folding my arms and be like, yep, seen it a million times before. And then getting that. I mean, once you get the switcheroo and you go into the final hour of the movie, it's essentially a horror movie with the villain as the protagonist. And more specifically, it's a contemporary CGI slasher movie. For example, the recent Halloween movies. By CGI, I mean like the blood is CGI. It's very like, it's not like an old school, Rick Baker type thing. It's constant CGI blood going everywhere, knives being thrust into stomachs and stuff like that. But it's that brutality of the more recent Halloween movies, where they're kind of like the WWF Raw vibe or like new metal or something, of just like complete fucking like evisceration, ripping people apart, just like so metal, like so metal that it becomes almost comedic. And I did laugh a few times. Like there's certainly deliberate black comedy in the movie. For example, his like commando partner, repeatedly getting injured in the exact same bit of his body, that kind of like shoulder wound where he just keeps getting stabbed and shot and everything in that bit of his body. Like those little subtle running jokes are cool. I mean, I can't think of many other ones, but that one was certainly there. And I like that they never mentioned it, never called it out. So it kind of lives as like a subtle little thing. But beyond that, like I don't know if I would use the word comedy. If can something make you laugh and it's not comedic? Because there are moments of gore and brutality in this movie, and it's not even gore because you don't get it. It's not like you're seeing the like brains spilling out of someone's head or something. It's almost all in your head. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to find this movie might not even have gotten like the highest rating we have as 18 certificate. This might even be a 15, because actually you don't really, if you think about it, you don't see gore on the level of what, the most extreme we've ever seen. But when you see, it's kind of like the head stomping scene in American History X, where you don't see a single thing, but it's like one of the most kind of in your head graphic scenes of all time. There's a lot of that here. yeah, it's that level of carnage. There's bits of it that I laughed. It wasn't an uncomfortable laugh, but it was a like almost a laugh of disbelief. But even disbelief is the wrong word, because I after you see him go scorched earth for 50 minutes, you kind of know what we're doing here. It's not like there's just, it's, I think what it is to me is it's not, I can't believe they did it in terms of like, I can't believe they went that far. It's more like, I can't believe they kept thinking of these ideas and they got so much, they managed to do what their mission statement clearly was so well. Because kind of like when you're watching The Raid or The Raid 2, which is my favorite of the two movies, there's an element of like, I just can't believe they're pulling off what they're trying to pull off to such a massive extent. Now, I'm not saying that this is anywhere near the quality of The Raid 2, and I'm not saying that it's one of the best action movies ever made. But what I am saying is that like they took their shot and they really fucking did it. You know, it's a very, very impressive movie. I had a great time with it. Now, it's rare that an action movie actually makes me question whose side I'm on. I mean, like there's the classic thing of like, oh, if you think about it, James Bond is really just, gunning down loads of like hired guys in some poor country who like probably don't actually give a shit about the mission of the baddie. They're just like, people trying to feed their family. Like that's a classic kind of a meta thought experiment or whatever. But in this movie, it's like nobody fucking deserves this. Like part of me is like, I'm here for it. It's a movie. It's fiction. He's the good guy. They're the bad guys. Let's go. And part of me is like, this is torture porn. Like, when the torture porn came out, it was like difficult for some people to navigate, because it was like, okay, but we're just paying to see the worst fucking shit happen to people in so much detail and seeing every like emotion from fear to sorrow running through their face. Like, at what point are we just like simulating torture ourselves? Like there's definitely elements of that here. And action films definitely have over the years like evoked many kind of right-wing ideologies, like capital punishment and general kind of like really, really brutal law enforcement. I think this film might be the most right-wing I've seen, and that's not to say that it has any kind of like monologues or any like overt propaganda that's like of a very political nature. Now there might be stuff there that I don't get because I'm not Indian, so I've certainly seen Indian films in the past and then been told afterwards, well, actually, if you know Indian society, this is actually like, one thing that was coming to my head is like, I don't know if how this film plays within a fuller understanding of the caste system, for example. I'm not saying it does have any relation to that, but like from my limited and very limited understanding or knowledge or whatever of the caste system, it wouldn't be too outlandish for me to learn that, okay, if this is a criminal gang that's like a family organized crime type operation, they're definitely of a lower caste than all the heroes who were like middle class or upper middle class or whatever. And maybe, anyway, certainly there's like massive fear in India of anyone lower caste than you. Like a fear, like kind of like maybe there would have been ethnic tensions on that level in England or America like 60, 70 years ago. There certainly is still those fears, but like it seems to be quite far behind in that regard. So I'm just imagining if you made a movie now set in Chicago, and it's like all poor black people that are the criminals, and all sort of upper middle class white people that are the heroes, and it's exactly this movie. Is that movie a okay movie to make? Is that movie like reliant on stereotypes, or is it like fanning the flames of some kind of, is it almost like it's taking advantage of an ugly schism within society? Like, all of that is suspicions I have about the movie, because like at the end of the day, as much as one or two of these criminals take it too far, like clearly the guy who's sort of, I actually really, really liked him. I thought he was a fantastic baddie, but that sort of sadist guy, the first guy that we see get on the train and I guess like interact with the love interest, I thought he was fantastic, but he's obviously got various sort of mental instability things going on. He seems to kill the girl. I mean, she does slash him or stab him or whatever, but I feel like he doesn't really like being belittled or undermined or whatever. And like in the American version of this movie, I think they would have established that he deserves to die, and maybe one or two others, like the big muscly guy, deserves to die. Everyone else is kind of like they're it's not that they deserve to die, but if they're in the way, and if you're defending yourself, then kill them. And that's how the American movie would have navigated it. Whereas this movie is like death penalty to every one of these motherfuckers, whether they were the like crazy sadist who killed my girlfriend, or they're literally just some poor dude who's like a petty criminal. And like, we do not see that. Like, I mean, I'm thinking of how the reputation of a movie like Death Wish has kind of evolved over the years, where like really, really, really bad shit happens to the dude, and then he's like, okay, all petty criminals now are going to die. That was a accepted story mode, and that level of kind of vigilante justice in inverted commas, like that was fine in Western cinema X amount of years ago. And I wonder how this movie was received in India, like if it was at all controversial. I wonder how it will be received in the West. Like, we just come off of this groundswell embracing of RRR, which then there was a slight backlash on the politics of that movie, but by and large, it was just that people loved it, had a great time with it. It's a classic singing and dancing, big, huge historical epic. So it's not this movie at all. But this movie is fantastic, in my opinion. But navigating its politics, I'm not saying people should have to grapple with this. I'm not saying that it's like, it's bad to just watch this movie purely on like action movie, goody, baddies, let's go. Like, that's fine. I'm all for watching it on that ground, but as I watched it, because it's such a torture porn movie, the hero of the movie is basically a slasher villain. It's so extreme, it's so gory. It spends so much time dwelling on the mourning of the mourning with the U of the baddies, like he might be sad about his girlfriend being killed, but they're all sad about their father and their brother and all these people. And so many scenes of them like sobbing, so much effort that he puts into trying to like make it worse, like stringing up the dead bodies and everything like that. It's just, we're not used to seeing this kind of stuff from heroes. But yeah, interesting stuff. A few other little stray observations. The rich guy, the like father of the love interest, super Joe Pantoliano look about him. All, like every time I saw him, I was like, is that actually Joe Pantoliano? He's like just like changed to Indian cinema. Really curious about the director, writer-director. Like, I'm wondering, see, because I'm just not really big on Indian film, like I don't watch it much, I kind of see films like this that somehow manage to find their way up through the, you know, get known internationally, but they account for probably 1% of movies over there. Like if we're seeing it, it's a rare movie, unless you're kind of an Indian film buff and you're deliberately checking that stuff out. But yeah, when I watch something like this, and it's not like a mega budget movie like RRR, I'm kind of curious, am I watching like a super renowned and super famous director? Am I watching like a massively famous actor? Or is this actually like a not particularly big movie, and or maybe like a debut, or, you know, the actors come out of nowhere? So I like to exist for a little while in that like unknowing space and just being like, it's just an isolated thing. But obviously I'll soon check out, like see what else these people have come out with, because if this director has done anything remotely on this level, then I'm very, very curious. And I'm very curious about what he does next. The other thing I really liked, because I lived in India for a while, I've spent time on trains a lot in India. I loved that they didn't cheat the sort of close confines of the train. Like normally you'd be like, yeah, it's set on a train or it's set on a plane, but we're going to build this set where we're going to basically take the most spacious plane that exists, and then we're going to make that even slightly bigger, so that, yeah, it kind of feels like they're on a plane, but it also kind of feels like we've given them enough room to just stage whatever kind of a scene we want. Whereas this felt more like, no, a train is this big, a train's corridor, or whatever the appropriate word is this narrow, and everything we do in the movie has to adhere to those dimensions. And I thought that was really, really impressive. I mean, also kind of like, restrictions breed creativity, or whatever the appropriate phrase is. They kept on having to think of, well, what other moves could you do here? Like, how else could he take a guy out? I loved how much he gets the shit kicked out of him. Like, it's the classic thing where, like, you really want to see the hero getting overwhelmed and just about managing to get out of it, and, getting a lot of injuries. And, it's always the thing that people say about Steven Seagal. It's like, part of what makes him not work, part of like his major failing really, is his refusal to ever get hit or get hurt, or just like he thinks that people aren't going to find him impressive if he ever gets bested even for like 10 seconds within a fight, when like pretty much anyone else watching movies understands that it's the opposite. It's the kind of Rocky Balboa thing of like, it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep going. Like every great action hero, like Bruce Willis in Die Hard, for example, like it all comes down to how overwhelmed they are. Now, this guy obviously clearly is the dominant force in the space, but they sure give him a good pummeling throughout the film. Just trying to think if there's anything else that came to mind. Just, yeah, really, really liked the movie. I do think that kind of making you think it's going to be one thing and then it being something else, however deliberately engineered that was, I suspect it was deliberately engineered, but in any case, it's the experience I had. I do think that was so powerful that it's going to be difficult, or it would be difficult for me to revisit this film. I don't have any particular interest to do so, but even if I did, I think I'd really struggle to get anything close to that that quality of viewing experience again. And yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, also another thing is like going into the setup. I love how Indian it is. The train, the arranged marriage, the limitations that are in place on their relationship and stuff. Like, I've seen quite a lot of, I mean, I haven't seen that much Indian cinema full stop, but of what I have seen, I've seen major attempts to erase the Indianness from it and make it a bit more kind of global, culturally speaking, in terms of like how people act and live and all that kind of stuff. And so it was nice seeing a film go, no, like we're sticking a flag in the ground. You can watch this movie, it's brilliant, but it's going to have India as the country that it's set in, like properly. And one other thing, the train, the actual logistics of the train in terms of like its operation was one area that I felt like the film was a bit muddled in. Like when they get on the train, the baddies get on the train, I'm like, okay, they're going first port of call, head up to the driver's booth so you can commandeer that. I mean, that's your first thing. But then the driver or the any kind of authority on the train, like the police cart and the manager and all that, they don't actually come into play until like what? Like, I mean, real late in the movie, a good sort of hour and 15 minutes in, I think. So this whole operation has been running on the train, unbeknownst to those driving and running the train, like the chief inspector, the manager. They're all just like chilling, they're asleep or whatever. And part of the plan involves the train stopping at one location and the dad of the baddies and a whole bunch of other people getting on. It looked like it was the middle of nowhere, but I guess that must have been a station. So that was all a bit like confusing. I mean, confusing is a bit of an over-exaggeration because it's such a simplistic movie. It's not like you're like, what's going on? I don't understand this movie, you know. But at the same time, that was one kind of area that I was just surprised that the script didn't have more of a plan for, like, they literally don't hijack the train. You know, like, you watch this movie and you remember, you know, I'm sure like in 5 years' time you ask me what this movie is about. Oh, some bandits hijack a train and the hero saves it. But they don't. They're literally just on the train doing bad shit. They never hijack it at all. And then, one other thing that I liked about it is that the baddies aren't nuclear mastermind evil genius. You know, there's not a suitcase with $1 billion on the train. Like, there's no huge stakes about saving the world or the country or anything like that. It's one of the only times I've seen an action movie where there isn't like the security codes to the nuclear warheads or you know, the president isn't on the train. Like, it's just, no, we're a bunch of bandits, as they repeatedly refer to themselves. They're just small-time crooks or medium-time crooks, you know, so it seems to be like a fairly professional outfit. But when trains, or well, I guess trains don't get these kind of attacks often, but when events where a whole bunch of people are in peril go down, it is usually like organized crime, like a gang with like machetes and, you know, if they're in India, machetes or whatever is the equivalent weapon in wherever you are. But that's so much more relatable. And it's also so much easier to do because you don't have to explain with this whole big convoluted plot why it's happening, or just found a bunch of stuff on the wall here. Where's Wally? But might pick that up. What else we got here? Oh, Matilda, is it? No, Fantastic Mr. Fox. Don't mind if I do. Yeah, okay. I think I've got everything I want from there. Yeah, it's Oh no, wait, this looks good. Sorry, going off track here. Some good stuff here. Right, I think I'll leave it at that. Yeah, I like that. I like that they're small time gangsters, and I liked that it was a bit of a muddled mess, different characters, different opinions, and yeah, it was like, you'd think that we'd see this more often because these are the actual people who are doing most of this like kind of bad shit in terms of like hijack a train or something. Not hijack again, but you know what I mean, rob a bunch of people, you know, go into a department store, rob a bunch of people. It is more this type of people than like, you know, some Soviet general who's gone rogue and who's trying to like start a coup or something. Like, this is actually more what happens in the real world, but we don't see action movies based around that very much. And that might come back to what I was saying before about like, well, most action movies are. Would you want to have the hero just killing a bunch of poor petty criminals? But this movie does, and yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm a pacifist. I'm anti-death penalty. I do not want crooks of this level, or really of any level, to suffer a fate like this. I mean, this is brutal, but in the movie, it works really well, and yeah, eager to see what else this director has made and will make. I'm assuming you liked it, because, you know, whether or not you loved it or whatever is one thing, but I think you like action movies enough that you'll have to have at least liked this. But let me know how you fared with Kill.
Yeah, gotta love the Bristol tradition. Well, if it is a Bristol tradition, but seems to me that they leave a lot of stuff outside. Fantastic Mr. Fox is a brilliant one. My dad used to read me Fantastic Mr. Fox. Matilda. Used to love a little bit of Where's Wally? Some nice stuff there. Could you imagine if you found out that just people leave their stuff out for a designated charity to collect them, and you're just grabbing stuff from people's front yards. Yeah, I'm glad you watched it in the end, and you managed to watch it on a TV by the sound of it, not a laptop. In a way, we have very similar notes regarding Kill. In a way, there's a few things I disagree on, but I would say that I had the exact same initial journey as you. I think I saw a trailer for this movie, but I wasn't really paying attention, and I had since forgotten it. And I remember we were watching a lot of train movies a few weeks ago, and just thinking about the various things that can be done with a train movie, how often it's set on a train, and the various things you can do. And I combed far and wide, not just American cinema, but cinema from all over. And you'd be surprised how little a movie is actually set on a train. Bit of fucking kill violence happening in my my gaming room now, because my cat just body slammed the other cat. Yeah, so this movie was brought to me as a really good action movie set on a train. That was his reputation as far as I knew. And because we watched a lot of train movies recently, and how hard it was to find anything of the genre, even an action movie set on a train, there's far and few between. And I had the exact same experience that you did the first, I guess it's 40 minutes if you say it is. And I thought I was watching a different movie. And I was being quite dismissive, if I'm being honest, we get this opening shot of the hero, and it's that slow-mo spin around that's almost ridiculous. And we get a very corny and cheesy story. A very kind of, from the clips that I've seen, very daytime Indian soap storyline. And that's not to say that American action movies don't have anything like that as well. They do, but it's just, I'm much more used to it culturally. You probably have the divorced dad, or someone who has to, usually is like has a rocky relationship with his wife or something like that, a John McClane, and they're on the way somewhere, or they're trying to accomplish something, and then they get stuck in some crazy situation. I'm not saying it's any less cheesy, but this setup was very cheesy to me, starting off with the engagement and just the level of acting and how the movie was shot. It lowered my expectations quite a bit. And I'm thinking, okay, well, the action movies aren't known for the story. When the action movie starts, when the action starts, then that's absolutely fine. It's an action movie after all. And when the action does start initially, when they get on the train, I remember thinking, okay, nice try, India. Obviously, I say nice try, India, as someone who has no information whatsoever of Indian action cinema and very little information of Indian cinema in general. But it just seemed like a step or two behind very good American action cinema or very good Hong Kong action cinema, and even stuff like some Korean or Indonesian action movies. Just felt a step or two behind it, and it just felt a little bit off, but still enjoyable. Still enjoyable DVD action movie. The choreography was a little bit predictable in terms of, I move here now, I get slammed here, then I move here to be kicked. And I'm thinking, okay, well, it's on a train. Still enjoyable. I'm still having fun. Great to see an action movie on a train. And it's just going to be really Jason Statham-y level, The Beekeeper kind of fun. This is ridiculous stuff, but that's fine. And I remember recording this at 12 something at night. I remember watching it with my partner, and the whole setup is so fucking cheesy with his engagement. And there's even a scene where they go into the toilet and he opens the window, and then this romantic breeze comes in and he gives her this diamond ring, and the lighting changes to show how romantic this scene is. And I'm thinking, okay, we're really not going to get anything from this movie. Don't know why it's hyped so much, but sometimes a foreign action movie gets the buff that maybe doesn't deserve, but it might lead to other things. And we get this scene where, well, you've discussed it, but I've had the exact same experience, where his fiance is running and getting taunted by the, as I call him, the college student villain of the piece. Probably didn't go to college, but just has that vibe about him, doesn't he? And then he's taunting her with the knife, and like you, I'm thinking, okay, this scene has to happen. Let's get through it. I don't mind scenes like that, and even how she was holding the knife had me thinking, why did they hold the knife like that? That's the least best way you could hold that knife. And it is a little bit of a skirmish, and he stabs her once, and I'm thinking, okay, stabbed once, that's fine. Okay, she got stabbed. That's really going to piss off her hero. he's not gonna like that. And then there's another stabbing. And then I'm still thinking, there's no way this is gonna happen, right? Like, she got a second stabbing. Okay, well, okay, you're going for the brutal fake out where she gets stabbed twice, and she probably needs to sit this one out for the rest of the movie. I guess that's why you're doing this. Then she gets stabbed in the fucking neck, and I'm thinking, oh shit, she just got stabbed in the neck. There's no coming back from that, is there? And I'm still thinking on some level, maybe it's a fake out. And then he kicks her off the fucking train. And I remember turning to my partner and saying, normally I have a saying that no body, well, actually I don't have a saying now that I'm saying out loud, but normally someone enters my head, no body, you didn't die. I'm going to think of a better phrase so next time I... and I turned to my partner and was like, yeah, normally it's no body, nobody died. But in this case, I think she fucking died. And then something visceral happens at this point when me and my partner are watching it, and we get fucking amped. And my partner expression was, oh shit, he is going to enter beast mode. We've got beast mode now. And the movie completely pulls its mild start from under me, and now it's almost like when you think a main character can't die in a show or something like that, and it changes, so people can die, but in this it's such a softball beginning that it took me a few seconds to adapt. But I remember he just gets really fucking angry, and I recall a scene earlier where his partner kills someone and he chastises his partner for killing someone, and I can't remember what he says, but it's something along the lines of, oh well, we basically don't kill people unless we have to. And his army buddy says, well, it was an accident, I kind of had to do it. And so that changes, that's an in-film reason of why he was getting his ass kicked a little bit before that as well. He was holding back. He is capable of killing people, but he was holding back, and now he's got this primal fucking urge to murder people. And now we're going to hit this fucking level. We're going to hit this level. And it does. It just amps it up. And we get a crazy amount of absolute gore. It's like if Mike Myers was the guy from The Raid at this point. And you were just fist pumping on the journey. And you know what this movie does as well, that I've never really seen done before in the staging of the fight. In one way it is The Raid on a train, but in another way we get these crazy fight moments. Like there's one character, and obviously every action movie needs him. We don't get him as much anymore, but every action movie had him for a time, and boy oh boy is he in this movie, and that's the big guy. The big guy is not quite the henchman, but he can be a henchman. He's not quite the final boss, but he's usually the hardest boss. And action movies in the 90s and 80s, and especially martial arts movies, always had the big guy. And we don't have the big guy so much anymore. And I love the big guy. And the big guy in this is fucking brilliant. We've got a cocktail of antagonists in this movie, because maybe I don't want to use the word villain by the end of this. Maybe I don't want to use the word villains by the end of this. It's hard to know, isn't it? But the big guy and our main hero, can't remember his name, and maybe do we even get his name? Yeah, we do. It's Amrit. They have a hell of a few sparring sessions, and there's a hell of a few crazy fights. I watched it with a really good sound system, so I could really hear the thuds, really hear the breaking of bones, and it does a lot of interesting choreography from this point. We get points where someone's neck gets broken downwards, and someone gets someone gets a Chelsea smile from the side and continues on. And this movie definitely got an R rating. It's absolutely crazy. You think it wouldn't get anything else. It's a different type of brutal violence than what we're used to, but it is fucking brutal violence. And the fight between the big guy and the soldier is so intense, and then one of them gets knocked out, and then a few henchmen get involved, and then we actually see something that I've never seen in an action movie before. People essentially take breaks to recover. So we get this one stage where the big guy gets his ass kicked for a minute, and he's sitting down, taping up his arms, taking a breather while the other guys continue to fight. And we get that a bunch of times with different characters, and it really adds to it. It's almost like the fighters have a stamina gauge, and the sustainability of the craziness when it does take a break. Because characters having stamina in this movie is being established, it doesn't really break the momentum in the way you think it would. And I've not seen anything like that either. And obviously we won't get into the right wing and left wing and all that, because it doesn't really exist. And I presume you weren't saying it in a political way anyway, and my retort isn't in a political way either, but I would say this is the most anti-violence action movie I've ever seen. And there's something that always stayed with me when I watched the Austin Powers movies. The first one. It has this scene where Austin Powers is killing all these henchmen. And then we get then we get cutaways to this loving home, and then they're getting phone calls, this loving family saying, "Oh, what happened, Daddy?" And it's like, "Oh, he got his head bit by a shark. Oh, he got crushed by a compactor." You hear all these families getting the calls, and this obviously it's a joke in Austin Powers, but it's like, these people have got families, these people have got feelings, these people aren't just henchmen to be killed. And normally in a movie you get one emotional bad guy out of the bunch, maybe someone that he likes gets killed, and then he's the emotional bad guy. He's the one that's going to be really angry and shooting, and he's going to have an emotional fight style, if you will. Like, "Oh, you killed my brother. Oh, you killed my dad." And okay, he's the one that's the loose cannon. And you don't know what you're going to get with the loose cannon, emotional bad guy. And in this, like I said, it's Mike Myers meets the main guy from The Raid, because you hit the nail on the head when you were saying that it does dwell on the mourning, and it does dwell on the effect of death in this movie constantly. And it does shock you quite a bit in terms of the action movie beats, starting with the fiance, but there's a kid who's trying to help out as well, and he gets brutally stabbed. And then that family can't forget that. And then we got about 3 different scenes where people find out that his fiancée died, and we've got to listen to them wail and cry. And the bad guys constantly break down and cry when their uncles, their dads, their brothers get killed. And you almost don't want the body count to be as high as it is, because it's just more people to break down and cry based on this John Wick fucking revenge story. And this movie almost changes your perception of violence, and it makes you uncomfortable with an insane body count action movie. And it works on so many different levels at the same time that you go from not expecting much to be really hyped about the Soldier's Revenge movie. It's like in that scene in The Simpsons where Homer beats the fuck out of the fake, I can't remember his name, but he's one of Krusty's friends. It's like the Hamburglar or something. And then Homer's just beating the fuck out of him. And then they're all like, yeah, and it's like, stop. He's already dead. And there's a bit of that in this movie where at a certain point you're like, stop. They're already dead, god damn it. And it really helps that the bad guys are depicted as, I wouldn't go as far as to say ordinary, decent criminals, but there's certainly a type of working class ethos to their plans, very DIY bandits. You know, they've planned to kidnap this guy and get ransom. Is that the plan? And it doesn't really go into what happened, but it gives you enough to do your own backstory. And my backstory was the rail lines and the owner of these rail lines has done something bad to this community. Like, I don't know, took their land. Obviously, this is never explored, but it does say something of how it's presented that I did draw my own story, which doesn't always happen. And even at working on that level is something that I don't normally, not fantasize about, but don't normally think about too much. But the way that they're presented, they're not masterminds. They're a bunch of bandits trying to pull off something. And there's a hint in there somewhere that maybe they might be justified in it. Not what they do, but they might have a justifiable gripe and they're going about it wrongly. It's never explored, but there's enough of it there to make the violence complicated. And even with the old bandit, kind of just looks like the sweet Indian man you would see walking across the road where I live. He seems to think he has got some kind of morality, whereas his college boy dad, if you will, he seems to be much more of the opinion, well, this is what we do bad shit. Why are you trying to pretend you're fucking Spider-Man or whatever, as he says at one point. Sorry, I just had to end my last voice note for a minute because I wanted to check how much battery I have left. The other thing about this movie as well is it, and I wonder in which way you were alluding to this. I think you're saying it, I can't remember what you were saying, but almost that it, maybe these aren't your words, but it sticked to its principle, it stick to its mission statement. I remember when we were talking about the last stop in Yuma County a while ago, it couldn't sustain its premise was one of the criticisms. In this, it really manages to sustain its premise that a train is being hijacked and manage to keep it interesting. Like this, and it really makes use of its environment, and it's refreshing to see a different type of train. It's quite cramped. There's an action sequence when the blinds are kind of down on the carriages and different people come out and attack. That's fantastic. And it's very nicely choreographed and something you don't get from American train movies, and certainly whether it's set in America or not, they don't really take advantage of the train very much. And there's a scene where one of the bandits is tied up and he hangs off the outside, and the college student bad guy, as he's now been called despite not going to college, he just got that vibe. I thought he was fucking brilliant as well, by the way. He tries to rescue his henchman, and how much do we get that where the life of the bad guys team actually means something? Normally it's scenes of the boss shooting a henchman because he's incompetent. And this, we got the main bad guy coming back to rescue his henchman. Even the slimy college boy bandit, who's the most slime bag character of the bunch, he goes back to try and rescue his friend. And that's pretty cool. And then we get the scene where the soldier uses that same bit of blanket rope thing to go up the carriages, and the way that the shutters are going down. And I thought it was absolutely brilliant, actually, when you find out that the train conductor and the guards have just been like not aware of this the whole fucking time. I thought that was brilliant. That was a nice bit of comedy, and in the way that we normally get in action movies where there's big action sequences and then we get a cutaway to someone eating their breakfast and then the fight goes through the wall. I think they managed to find a moment like that on a train, which was brilliant. They managed to find space to do different things on a train, even that late in the game. And I think the plan was they originally were planning to stop the train and hijack, but they got distracted. And just another thing that occurred to me, first of all, this director hasn't done many stuff before. He's done one action comedy and a few other psychological comedies, so he seems to be very comedy based. And I did notice that thing where the soldier's partner kept on getting stabbed in the same arm and got and it didn't dwell on it, but I did think as well that shit, he keeps getting hit in the same fucking place. And there's another scene where one of his uncles, when he hangs all the bodies up, and there's meant to be this tragic scene where his uncle he finds his uncle and he's like, "Oh no, uncle, you're dead." And there's a big fucking knife stuck in his mouth. And it's just so ridiculously placed that it's just funny, not in an uncomfortable way, not in a laugh out loud funny, but in a way that, are you fucking seeing this shit? Are you fucking seeing this? And yeah, that it really worked. Now, do I think this is a great movie? Absolutely not. Did I really enjoy this movie? Absolutely. I thought it was very good. It gave me feelings that I don't get very often. And I watched Bad Boys 4 in the morning, so the contrast was striking between, on the surface, it's the same kind of cheese as it starts off, the same type of thing, and then one just switches and fucking brings it to another level. That's what I was going to say. When his soldier partner gets stabbed, we get a beast mode 2. So it pulls the same trick again, and then we get more beast mode, because he tells his soldier friend that, "I don't want you going anywhere in case you get hurt." And then his soldier friend gets fucking killed as well. And then he gets rage times 2, and then that pushes the final third back into a space of crazy mayhem. And, you know, in a movie like Taken, Liam Neeson is fucking taking out a bunch of low level thugs that have no abilities, and not that you feel sorry for them, but you're thinking this is a bit one-sided, this is a bit unfair. Or like in Commando, where Arnie is taking on Freddie Mercury looking Australian with a chainmail vest, and it just seems very one-sided, and it's a bit anticlimactic, all those movies. Whereas in this, because there's so much emotion from the bad guys, it's not anticlimactic at all. It's fucking horrific. And when they are saying, we need to get off this fucking train, and then the uncle tells them, no, we must go on, you're kind of feeling sorry for them and hoping they'll get off the train. They're not all a bunch of fucking psychos. They're just low-level criminals who got caught up in the wrong moment. And then we do get some stupid action beats, like where they finally capture him again, and they decide not to kill him, and like, why the fuck are they keeping him alive? That was a bit stupid, but you know, that's fine. And the final scene between the college boy and the soldier, where the college boy fucks him up and starts stabbing him loads, and then, okay, because it's the final scene, now this guy is gonna stab the fucking absolute John Wick guy loads of times. So does that mean that the college boy is as good as him in a fight? No, it's just because it's the final fight. We gotta see. We always get that scene, and I didn't like those things, but they're minor complaints. I had an absolute brilliant time with it. The main thing I'll remember from this movie is how it made me feel about violence, in terms of what am I rooting for here, because the level of extremity was matched only by the level of extreme feelings of loss by the people who were getting their fucking ass kicked, and it worked concurrently. And then that 40-minute switch point give me a cinematic feeling not in the cinema, and that alone puts this movie in very special company.
Hey man, got a baby in my arms, so I'm not sure how far I'll get through this voice note. I've also got my daughter watching Bluey in the other room. There she's calling me now. Wants me to read her a book. Okay, let me put a pin in this and get back to you. Okay, so yeah, I think we had pretty much the same take on the movie, other than maybe I was a bit more suspicious of the sort of conservative philosophy underpinning the film, maybe a sort of classist, death penalty, tough on crime bent to it. But in terms of the action, like, yeah, we're completely on the same page. In fact, I really, really, really enjoyed the film, and then talking about it with you and hearing your thoughts on it, it's actually going up in my esteem. It's like kind of solidifying in my head as such a special and unique movie. I've taken notes on the voice note you sent, so just kind of move through that. Yeah, as you said, we did watch a whole bunch of train movies a little while ago, and not only watched a bunch, but we kind of took stock of train movies we'd seen in the past. And if you want to call it a genre, I mean, it's weird to call it a genre because it's literally just a setting, but if you want to call it a genre, train movies, this now goes right up. I think Train to Busan is the gold standard. This is probably top 2 train movies. And when I say train movies, I'm not talking about Murder on the Orient Express, which happens to be set on a train. I'm talking about movies that like actually use the train, make like a hell of a lot of use of the train. Murder on the Orient Express does make some use, but you could set it in a hotel or something like that, snowed in or something. This is like Uber train to the max, and yeah, it's I wouldn't say they do everything you can do with a train, but they do a hell of a lot. Like, for example, they never drive the train, right? They never disconnect carriages. They never hijack the train. There's certainly classic train stuff that doesn't happen in this movie, but in a way, it's more grounded. Like, for example, you can't get on or off the train unless it's basically stopped. That's like, that's an interesting level of realism to put in a, like, all guns blazing action movie. And I say all guns blazing, but one of the best things about the movie is that there aren't really guns in it, because there wouldn't really be guns in this situation. There'd be the odd shot fired, but for the most part, it would be machetes that were being used, and that just makes a much more thrilling movie, in my opinion. Like, John Wick, for all its strengths, is very gun heavy. The melodramatic stuff that you were talking about at the beginning, the kind of soap opera stuff, which I'm used to seeing in Indian films, it reminded me of Con Air. And in Con Air, it's definitely supposed to be comedic. Like, it's supposed to be cheesy, and they're going for a kind of camp shtick. This film, because I haven't seen the other works of the director, or I don't really know much about the film culture, I don't know if it's supposed to be sort of tongue-in-cheek, or if it's supposed to be just like, no, this is just the drama that's in this film, and it's supposed to be taken as, like, completely straightforwardly. I will say it works on a Con Air level. Maybe not when you first see the beginning of the movie, because you're a bit like, okay, what's this movie got? But when you reflect on the whole film and the whole package, it's like, yeah, in that opening 40 minutes where we're basically just tricking you into thinking that you're seeing something different to what you are seeing, why not go a little soap opera and cheesy? And by a little, I mean a lot. The fake out, well, it turns out not to be a fake out, but what I assumed was a fake out with the love interest being killed. I went through the exact same journey as you. It's like, first she's holding up the knife to the baddie, and I'm like, oh God, I hate the scenes where the love interest can hold her own against the big baddie, and they have to keep on thinking of ways that some reason he's not going to kill her. Either he can't kill her or he won't kill her or something. It's just so contrived. I'm like, let's get out of here. Then he's got her at knife point, and I'm like, okay, well, he's not going to kill her. And it's just like, then he stabs her, and I'm like, yes, stab, okay. Slow motion, sad music. I'm like, come on, man. I didn't just fall out of a tree. Like, I know what we're doing here. Let's just move on. And then he stabs her again. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. And it's the exact same thing that you described until now. Like you said, I had the exact same thing of like, no body, no death, but she has been stabbed in the neck and kicked off a really fast moving train, and I think they managed to do it. I did have a slight fear in my head. In fact, actually, I stopped and started watching the movie a few times, not for hours, but just for like little brief moments, for one reason or another, and kind of lost my place in the movie. And when I was going back into it, for some reason, I was sort of scrubbing through the film, if that's the right word, and I accidentally clicked into the end of the movie, like didn't watch anything, but like saw like one frame or something, and it was him sat beside her. I was like, she's not hanging to the bottom of the train. And I was like, if she's hanging to the bottom of the train, then I'll accept it, because it's just going to be some crazy Indian cinema, like over the top thing. But it is going to be a shame because I'll miss an opportunity. And actually, it turned out to be just like kind of a dream sequence, which is fine. Yeah, they killed her. Like, it will forever be the legendary movie where they actually killed her. And of course, it's like, yeah, we've seen John Wick, we've seen things where like they can Con Air, it's the bunny rabbit or whatever. Although I don't think the bunny even gets killed. But not that it was ever alive in the first place. But anyway, I digress. it's clearly like a mechanic to earn what we see for the whole rest of the movie, but it still works really well. You mentioned the like throat in mouth thing, like that. The movie is just so jam packed full of brilliant moments. One of my favorite things about seeing the John Wick movies, especially seeing them on release, like opening weekend kind of time, is just all those bits that you can reference. In fact, that's actually my favorite thing about the John Wick movies, is you're left with like a catalogue of 2-second moments that are absolutely amazing. There's a lot of stuff in the John Wick movies that's terrible, but what's brilliant about it is just these little tiny morsels of choreography that you could kind of watch over and over again. The throat and mouth is one of them for me. I mean, there's many in this movie, but what he throws, I think he throws or thrusts, I can't remember, a knife into the throat of that guy and then kicks him in the face, i.e. kicks him in the knife, which sort of plunges the knife down in, like, just takes about 1 second of screen time, but is obviously, it take a lot of like planning, probably storyboarding, certainly like you have to set up the shots really well. There's so much visual clarity in this film, like the whole thing works really well, and it's in such close quarters that poses a massive challenge, but they really pulled it off with all sorts of inventive camera work and did a fantastic job. You mentioned the like net snapped forward, like when he gets his foot on top of that guy's head and you're like, something's coming here, and then just snaps it down. And that was a moment like many others where I was like, just like, I couldn't believe. I was, again, like feeling like it's going too far with how brutal it is, but also like being so happy with it. You mentioned that this film got an R rating. I mean, we're in the UK, and R rating is a 15 certificate, where we're used to films now all going for the PG-13 or the 12A here, like all the Marvel movies and everything. Like almost every film that comes out, it's kind of trying to make sure that it can be seen by essentially kids. And when a film goes, no, we're going for an R rating, like maybe Deadpool or something, it's seen as like, whoa, the balls in this movie to be brave. But an R rating is still kids, really. Like, it's a 15 certificate. So what I'm curious about is if this film managed to get an R rating, or if it got what here would be 18, what in America would be NC-17, which nowadays is almost unheard of. I mean, back in the day, they made movies for adults, but now they almost never do. Certainly not like a movie like this, which has a big budget. You might get some like indie relationship drama where it doesn't really matter how much money it makes, but this is so brutal. I wonder if it could actually. The only thing is that violence is kind of okay with the censors. It's more sexual stuff that they tend to draw the line at. Like Shame, I think, was a movie that got an NC-17. Anyway, curious to know how this film has been, and if it's been edited. I mean, I'm assuming what I've seen is the full cut, but as I said, it does leave most stuff to your imagination, and maybe that's a careful adherence to some sort of censor board. I like what you said about the stamina thing, how the baddies they need a rest, and I think it's such a cheesy cliche in action movies where, yeah, he's fighting 4 guys, but 3 of them are sort of just standing back, shaking their fists, like allowing the other guys fight, you know. And if you actually look at the guys who aren't like super engaged in the fight, it looks like they're just sort of doing nothing, or they're rolling about endlessly. You're right, this film always has a good sense of where everyone is, why they are where they are, and that exists within a fight, like within a sort of 2-meter squared space, but it also exists across the entire train. Like, there's always a well thought out and consistently followed reason why people are where they are. Now, some of it might stretch credulity a bit, because it might be like, well, why wouldn't they kill these people here? Or why, some of it's not uber realism, but at least there's a reason to it, however realistic that reason is, as opposed to just like, let's flick a switch and then there's baddies here, and let's flick a switch and there's no baddies here, like just completely artificial staging that you get in most action movies. So that was very appreciated. It's interesting you describe it as like the most anti-violence action movie that you've ever seen. I think when you first said that, I just burst out laughing, because if someone was like, you know what, I'm really into anti-violence stuff, like that's my thing. I'm like, I hate violence. I'm some Buddhist person or something. But like, you got to check out this movie. But it is. I do get what you're saying, and I wonder whether I agree or not. And I think that's, this is a movie mainly to be enjoyed for its action, and not. It's not like some sort of philosophical movie that you spend ages like trying to dissect the themes and stuff. But the question of whether or not it's an anti-violence movie is the most interesting question about the film, really. We've seen that a lot of times before. Like, for example, when Irreversible came out, it was a very controversial film because some people said that it was the most anti-rape movie that you could possibly get. Like, it was like really the only movie that truly showed how horrific the reality of rape is. And then there was other people who said this movie exploits rape as like a ingredient for its like plot, for the character motivation and stuff, and it's in incredibly poor taste. And that was there's numerous films that have been accused of sort of opposite things because they go so extreme on showing the reality of something that it's then sort of accused of fetishizing that thing. Now, this film, I would say, fetishizes violence. You come to this film and you watch this film and you enjoy this film because you really, little cough, you really, really enjoy seeing brutal on-screen violence in all its glory. Now, is it... You certainly see the impact of that violence on these criminals, like in terms of all of the sorrow and the mourning and how just torn up they are. And as you said, it's a rare action movie. You're like, I don't want the body count to get any bigger. Like, this isn't fair. Like, just let the baddies just get off the train. Let's just go home. We've had our fun. It's like the smoking 100 cigarettes thing when your parents catch you smoking a cigarette. But I don't think that this film is doing that. I think this film wants you to be fully on board with what he's doing the whole way through. So I personally don't think it's an anti-violence movie. I think it's either a pro-violence movie. In other words, yeah, criminals, man. Criminals, they're messing up society. Kill them, destroy them, mutilate them, absolutely eviscerate them. Wouldn't that be great? It's either that, or it's a more nihilistic, where it's just like, look, this is just a movie. Forget about real world. This is just fun. Switch off your real world brain. We're just having fun here. Either way, to me, it's not an anti-violence movie, but I think it's very interesting to consider it. I suppose there's one thing is what's the film's intention, and the other is how do you receive it as an individual. So it can be an anti-violence film to you without there being any intention of it being anti-violence. But yeah, it's an interesting question. It can be certainly explored at much greater depth. You talked about the plan. I mean, I don't think their plan is to kidnap the guy. Like, that's not the master plan. That's something that they happen upon. Their plan, as I understand it, and this is why, as you said, it's a very working class group. Their plan is to get on the train, whip machetes, and aggressively rob everyone on the train of their iPhones and their money and all that stuff, and then get off the train. They're only supposed to be on the train for like 10 minutes. They've happened upon this guy who, is like a fat cat, and they're like, oh, we could kidnap him. That'd be amazing. But that's a harebrained scheme of like one of the lower level people, like the big boss, the Don or whatever. He would immediately be furious if they got off the train with that guy. They'd be like, oh, fuck's sake, what have you done? That's too far. But the plan originally is a horrible, horrible thing to do, like traumatic for everyone involved. I'm not trying to in any way defend it. Like, these are bad guys, but they don't want to kill anyone. They are poor people who want, it's kind of like the pirates in Captain Phillips. Like, they just want some wealth, and they do this habitually. This is their life. This is their, job. It's not something that they've done out of desperation because they couldn't meet their mortgage payment that month. Like, they are career criminals, but there isn't some massive big evil plan, and the kidnap thing is just like a random idea, and then things just get out of hand. So if you've got, it's hard to think of a more forgivable, like, or and kind of the punishment doesn't fit the crime type action movie. Of course, there's plenty of action movies like The Rock where like the baddies are actually like totally noble in the core idea, but they've just gone about it in a way that's like very socially irresponsible. But yeah, it's interesting that you could have made the baddies so much worse, like just pure sadistic right from the beginning. They're like human traffickers. They're just like the absolute scum of the earth. We see them do so much bad stuff. We basically see a bunch of poor guys get on the train to rob people's watches and then be traumatized as this monster like rips apart their entire family. Now, granted, there is one of the baddies on board who's a sick sadist, but he's just one guy in the mix. I don't know. It's hard to justify, other than it's incredibly fun to watch. Other than that, it's kind of like you watch a horror movie and you watch the first installment, and it's like the heroes are the teens, the victims, and the baddie is like, you're terrified of him and you really don't want him to kill anyone. You want to get away. Well, by the time you get to the fourth installment, everyone's just there throwing popcorn into their mouth because they just want to see their hero, which is the villain, just go to town and all these like dumb teens. So it feels like this film, even in its first installment, has already got to that point. I also love the solidarity of the baddies. Like, as you said, the main like twisted sick guy goes out of his way to try and save one of them. They're all like pretty much all well, not all the time, because they do want to kill the big business guy, but most of their continued presence on the train is motivated by trying to save their kin, and most of their like aggressive actions are like sort of revenge motivated. They are very unified, as you said. Like almost every action movie ever made, the baddies just couldn't care less about each other, and that's one of the ways they demonstrate that these guys are like of an ethically lower caste or whatever. In this case, they're family, and they love each other, and that's really novel. And anything novel in a genre film is always much appreciated. The thing you mentioned about like you liking that comedic beat of the cops on the train, like they just get revealed in the 11th hour, like, oh shit, they've been on this train all this time and they weren't doing anything. Yeah, I think that's fine. Part of the thing is I've seen a lot of train movies, and I've seen a lot of like Die Hard movies where it's like some bad shit going down in a fixed location and the hero needs to kill everyone kind of thing. Like, I just expect certain things, rightly or wrongly, probably wrongly, and that aren't in this film, and it's almost confusing, like breaks my like formula brain to go, how come none of the victims or the baddies go across the entire span of the train or try and hijack the train? Like, how is it that all this shit can go down and like all of the authority on the train doesn't know until the end of the movie? It's so like, it just is such an unusual decision. Like, why didn't the police try and overwhelm them at the beginning and then they got, disarmed or something? But yeah, as a comedy beat, like as you said, that trope of like someone eating their breakfast and then wall gets smashed in, it works. And yeah, it's not really a complaint of mine. It was just like surprising. There's probably just more drama and more plot that could have been mined if they had to actually confront the authority of the train at the beginning. But I suppose they're only supposed to be on it for 5-10 minutes and they're just robbing people. They're actually not trying to like hijack the train and drive it into like some big building in Delhi or something like that. So yeah, great movie. I loved it. Nice reference to the chainmail clad baddie from Commando. That's, I agree, one of the most unequal fights in film history. Dora's calling me now, so yeah, let me know if there's anything else that you thought about the movie. But really good find.
Yeah, not to go totally into a intellectual side of this movie and turn that conversation that way, but then again, we have had about how many fucking minutes at this stage about the action, so I feel okay to turn the conversation to maybe not an anti-action movie. That's very strong. But in terms of how it made me felt, and again, this is like any interpretation of art, a subjective thing, and I'm not sure if I'm even making the argument that the director intended that feeling. I couldn't be sure is the answer to that question. You mentioned Irreversible. I've never seen that movie, but I get where you're coming from. Now, if this film is an anti-action movie, and that word was chosen hyperbolically, I suppose, but it certainly made me feel mixed emotions about the violence now that I'm trying to explain this. And I feel like it's a type of emotion that you can only really get from a movie like this. Now, first of all, this movie is absolutely in love with its gratuitous violence. Not gratuitous for me, but over-the-top violence. It's in love with that extreme type of violence and over-the-top people's heads getting absolutely pulverized and smashed. I'm not saying that the director doesn't have an eye for that in the same way that Michael Bay has an eye for explosions and going up women's skirts. That's definitely there in this. But I think if I'm watching a movie that's mission statement is this is going to be an anti-violent movie, then I'm more critiquing it in that way, because I've almost got my guard up. Okay, you're trying to tell me that violence is wrong. What you got, buddy? What you got? And now I'm critiquing it that way. It's like if you know somebody, it's almost like when you know someone's point of view on a subject is extreme and you're having a nuanced conversation about a different subject and you're already on guard because you know they have an extreme view on it. Like, for instance, if I'm talking about a cooking show or food and I know some person is a very preachy vegan maybe, and I know you're a vegan and I know you're certainly not that, so please don't think that I'm calling you out on anything like this, but then you have a conversation with them about food and then you're already on guard where their view is coming from because you know their view is coming from this place and everything about it you're a little bit wary of. So if someone's making an anti-war movie or an anti-action movie and that's their sole goal, you're kind of sitting back thinking, How are you trying to get me here? How are you trying to manipulate me? What you trying to do to me? What you trying to do to me? But I feel like, and the reason why this movie is so effective to me in terms of making me think differently about the violence I was seeing, was that it probably isn't this movie's mission statement. It probably isn't the director's mission statement. And maybe it just ended up that way, or maybe he felt something while he was filming this. But because I think the movie is so far in the field of almost fetishizing violence and action in a really good, entertaining way. I mean, of course, I love it. I love that type of thing. Because that's the point of view it's either masked in, or that's the artist's intention. You don't have your guard up, like you're being manipulated or you're being tricked. Because maybe you're not, and maybe it's just something that's observed, and you had the reaction in a similar kind of way, and it really makes you start to question: do you want more of this? And I don't think that would happen if it was the movie's mission statement. I think I would have my guard up too much. But because I'm enjoying this so much, and why do we enjoy violence so much? You mentioned the R-rated comments earlier, and this movie is an 18. But why when I'm watching a movie as a kid, I could watch Terminator and I could watch these graphic, by those standards, scenes of violence, and then my family would fast forward the sex scenes that were probably tame or tit out. Why is violence acceptable in that way? And why are we immune to it? It's like that thing where if a dog gets killed, that's a real bummer. Why am I not okay with seeing that? And why am I so okay with seeing people get stabbed multiple times, the people being horribly mutilated? And why don't I treat it in the same way when I see sexual assault on screen, where that's a real affecting it? Why are we immune to it now? And in certain genres, we're designed to be immune because we switched that side of our brain off, and I'm here to be entertained. It's like we were talking about something a few weeks ago in a rom-com where it might be some incredibly horrible violation, but, you know, it's a rom-com. Yeah, you got to accept that in a rom-com. And we accept violence in action movies in the exact same way. And because this movie just either intentionally or unintentionally skews my feeling anyway about that, it did something that no other action movie ever did, and that's make me care about the countless bodies getting fucked up by this Indian John Wick character. And that's why I say it's the most anti-action movie there is. And I've just read there that this movie is based on the director's real-life train robbery experience. That's what it's inspired by. In 1995, he was involved in one of these robberies, obviously the victim, and I'm sure it wasn't as crazy as this, but I wonder in what way that shaped his viewpoint. And it's very much a balancing act in this, because you mentioned movies like The Rock, where the terrorists have noble intentions, but they're way off and fucking crazy. I don't know if you think this is an action movie or not, and it doesn't matter, but then I think it's something like Captain Phillips, where I was very much on Barkhad Abdi's side and the Somali pirates. Obviously, I was on Tom Hanks' side as well, but when the military gets involved, and we have the Marines, and we have them being complete underdogs, meaning the Somali pirates. I very much wanted them to get away with it, and I very much was on their side for this crazy heist they're trying to pull off. So there has been moments in movies where, I think it was Paul Greengrass in that movie, where they've done such a good job of giving us a perspective of the bad guys that I've almost totally switched sides. Whereas in this, at a certain point, it's not so much that I switched sides as it was that I just got really confused about who I should be rooting for. And it's normally very clear in action movies who I should be rooting for. And I've never had that muddledness and murkiness in this type of genre anyway. And I just saw as well there that they're going to remake this as an American movie as well. So we'll see what happens with that. But you mentioned and you compared it to Con Air in terms of it's meant to be, you used the words melodramatic, or I can't remember if you said that it's meant to be comedic or maybe comedic and melodramatic. I feel like nothing in this movie is meant to be funny in terms of the beginning, and they're pulling the wool over their eyes, pulling over our eyes in terms of the woman, his fiance, getting absolutely fucking stabbed and kicked off a fucking train. But now that I think about it, since you talked about when you skipped frame and she was back at the end, they do try and tie this back to some kind of deep meaning that definitely isn't earned, and makes me think that it is intended to be, I don't know, emotional, or maybe emotional is the wrong word, but it is intended, they are genuine with what they're trying to show with this love story and set up in the beginning, that we are meant to care about this. But obviously we're seasoned action movie cynics, so all we cared that they managed to fucking kill her, so we could be like, oh, they actually did it. And again, that goes back to the violent side of things. What that says about us, that our triumphant moment is that they managed to horribly kill a character and kick her off the train. I don't know what this says about us, but they do try and circle back to that throughout the movie, where we get flashbacks of their love at different times, and it does it intermittently throughout the violence. And I was so uninterested in that, and it was so forgettable that I actually forgot about that, even with the fortune telling and the love lines and all these kind of little segments here and there. And that brings us full circle to the ending, where I think it's presumed that he dies, because they bring it back to that screenwriting dialogue. Oh, do I have to die to be with you? And it's almost like he comes to terms with, oh, I need to die now in order to be with this person. So I think the movie does really want you to care about their relationship as well. But obviously we couldn't give a fuck about that, and it's done so cheesily from my point of view that I was interested in that she served as a vehicle for him to go fully beast mode. And again, a lot of time this happens at the beginning of the film, and it serves as a motivation for people to go on missions and revenge missions and things like that. And it seems like some people have a problem with that trope, but I mean, what higher motivation to want to murder people than your loved one dying? So I have no problem with it, but the placement of it in terms of 45 minutes into the film is what's really interesting about this movie. But yeah, brilliant stuff.
Yep, all interesting stuff. Just try to keep it quiet now because everyone's asleep in the house. End of the day, just playing some video games. Just for the record, you refer to it as an anti-violent movie, not an anti-action movie. And I thought it was particularly funny, just like the idea of this being an anti-violence movie. But yeah, it kind of is. It definitely kind of is. But definitely one of the most violent movies I've seen. And yeah, I don't know, have you checked out what else these guys have made? I think you mentioned that the director had made a comedy movie or something. But yeah, hopefully this is the start of a new trend. And I know Monkey Man is not an Indian movie per se, but the fact that this and Monkey Man both came out roughly at the same time, a couple of months apart, and are both like John Wick inspired action movies with like an Indian element to them. I wonder if that's like relevant or if it's a coincidence. Like, is there like a scene emerging or something? But yeah, definitely would like to see more of this.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.